It was a bright Monday morning when Lena walked through the glass doors of her company. Her heels clicked sharply on the marble floor as if announcing her arrival. Everyone in the office straightened up when they saw her. She had recently been promoted to branch manager, and she carried herself like she owned the building. Her face always wore the same confident expression, one that told everyone she was in charge. Lena had worked hard to get to this point, and she never missed a chance to remind others of it. She liked being respected, even feared a little. 2. Her leadership meant control, and she made sure everyone knew their place. Her voice often carried across the open floor as she gave orders. "I need those reports before lunch," she would say, not bothering to look up from her phone. The team knew better than to argue. That morning, the HR assistant walked over to her desk with a polite smile. "Good morning, Lena. We have a new employee joining us today in operations. His name is Daniel." Lena barely looked up. "All right. Tell him to wait in the conference room. I'll talk to him when I have time." She continued typing an email, her fingers moving fast as if her work couldn't wait a second. A few minutes later, the new hire was brought in. He was dressed neatly but simply, nothing flashy, just a plain shirt and trousers. He carried himself calmly and greeted her with a friendly smile. "Good morning, ma'am. I'm Daniel. It's my first day." Lena gave him a quick glance and nodded. "Right. You're in operations, correct? Just follow what they tell you. We move fast here, so try to keep up." Her tone was flat, almost dismissive. She didn't bother shaking his hand. Daniel nodded politely, still smiling, and left the room with the HR assistant. He didn't seem offended. He looked around the office quietly, taking in how people worked, how they talked, and how Lena's presence seemed to make everyone tense. As the day went on, Daniel was given simple tasks, sorting files, checking stock lists, updating small records. He worked patiently, never complaining. But Lena noticed how he didn't rush like others. He took time to double-check his work, even asked questions when something wasn't clear. To her, it looked like inefficiency. At one point, she walked by his desk and said sharply, "You'll have to pick up the pace if you want to last here. We don't have time for slow workers." He looked up with calm eyes and said softly, "Understood. I just want to make sure everything is accurate." Lena sighed. Accuracy is fine, but speed matters more in this office. She turned away without waiting for a response. By the end of the first day, most of the staff had already noticed the new guy's kind nature. During lunch, he sat with the interns and junior staff, listening to their stories. They liked how easy he was to talk to. Lena, on the other hand, ate alone at her desk, busy typing something that looked important. In the following days, Daniel kept doing his work quietly. He arrived early, greeted everyone, and left only after finishing all his tasks. But Lena continued to treat him like he was invisible. She rarely said thank you, and when she did talk, to him it was only to correct something small or give more orders. One morning the team was setting up for a client presentation. Lena was leading the meeting, her tone strict and impatient. "Make sure the slides are perfect," she said, checking her watch. "If this deal doesn't close, it's on all of you." Daniel noticed a small mistake on one of the slides and gently mentioned it to her before the clients arrived. "Excuse me, there's a typo in the product figures. Should I fix it before you present?" Lena frowned. "I've already checked everything, Daniel. Just focus on your work, please. Don't question my reports." He nodded and quietly went back to his seat. The meeting began, and halfway through, one of the days rolled by, and the tension in the office grew more noticeable. Lena's tone grew sharper and her patience seemed to get shorter every day. She blamed stress, deadlines, and the lack of discipline around her. To her, everything that went wrong was someone else's fault. She would scold her team during meetings and take all the credit when things went right. Daniel continued to work quietly, never showing any sign of irritation. He arrived before most of the staff and often stayed late to finish what others left incomplete. Some of the younger employees started turning to him for help because he was patient and explained things in simple ways. It didn't sit well with Lena. She noticed that people seemed more comfortable around him than around her, and it bothered her more than she cared to admit. One Friday morning, The office was preparing for a big campaign presentation. Everyone was busy, but Lena's voice echoed across the room as she gave orders. Make sure everything is printed and stapled properly. The client is very particular about details. She looked over and saw Daniel checking through the campaign figures again. Daniel, she said loudly, you've been staring at that sheet for 10 minutes. If you can't keep up, I'll find someone who can. He looked up calmly. I'm just reviewing the budget line. There's a slight mismatch in the numbers. I think we might have added a cost twice. Lena frowned. I already reviewed that. It's correct. Please don't waste time on things I've already handled. He gave a small nod and quietly stepped back. When the client meeting began later that afternoon, everything went smoothly until one of the clients pointed out that the total expenses were slightly off. Lena froze for a moment, then forced a smile and said it must be a printing error. Inside, she was furious. After the meeting, she stormed into the office and called Daniel over. Next time you think you're smarter than me, keep it to yourself, she snapped. You could have fixed it if you noticed it earlier instead of just sitting there acting like a genius. Daniel stayed calm. I tried to mention it before the meeting, he said softly. You said it was already correct. Lena's eyes narrowed. Don't argue with me, I don't need excuses, just do your job. He nodded, not saying another word. The other employees nearby exchanged uneasy glances but quickly pretended to be busy. They had seen this kind of thing before. Lena's temper was something everyone had learned to avoid. Over the next few days, Daniel kept to himself. He did his work with quiet focus, but Lena's attitude toward him didn't improve. She often gave him tasks that were beneath his position, making him fetch files or print documents she could have easily asked an assistant to handle. Some people in the office whispered that she was picking on him. Others just felt sorry for him. Despite her harshness, Daniel remained calm and respectful. He greeted her every morning with the same polite smile, no matter how cold she was to him. That only made her more suspicious. She couldn't figure out why he never reacted, never got angry, never complained. It was as if nothing she said could shake him. One day, during a team meeting, Lena was showing her new campaign plan to the staff. She spoke confidently about her strategy and the projected numbers. When she asked if anyone had questions, most stayed quiet. Daniel hesitated for a second, then raised his hand. I think we might be missing an opportunity in digital channels, he said in a calm tone. If we shift a small part of the budget online, we might reach more customers for less cost. Lena let out a short laugh. I appreciate your enthusiasm, she said, her words heavy with sarcasm. But these strategies are beyond your level. Let's leave the planning to people who understand the market better. The room went silent. Everyone looked down at their notes. Daniel simply nodded and said, Of course, before taking his seat again. Later that evening, when most people had left, Lena stayed behind in her office. She leaned back in her chair, scrolling through her phone. Through the glass walls, she noticed Daniel still sitting at his desk, organizing some reports. She wondered why he was still there. She walked over and said, You can go home, Daniel. It's late. We don't get extra points for overtime here. He smiled. I just wanted to finish the supplier report. It'll make things easier for the morning team. She looked at him for a moment. You're oddly committed for someone new, she said. I believe in doing my best, he replied simply. She nodded slightly but didn't respond. As she walked back to her office, she felt a strange mix of curiosity and irritation. There was something about him she couldn't quite place. A week later, word spread around the office that the company's new CEO would be visiting the branch soon. It was big news. Everyone started preparing, cleaning their desks, fixing their reports, and updating files. Lena, of course, was thrilled. She saw it as her chance to impress upper management and show off her achievements. During a team huddle, she announced, The new CEO will be visiting us next month. I expect everyone to be on their best behavior. I want this branch to look perfect. If we make a good impression, it'll reflect well on all of us. Daniel stood quietly in the back of the room, listening. A small, almost amused smile formed on his face, but he said nothing. Over the next few days, Lena became even more demanding. She made the staff stay late, polish presentations and redo reports she didn't even plan to show. Every day she talked about what she would say to the CEO, how she'd explain her leadership methods, and how she'd highlight her success. One afternoon, as the team was reviewing a project, Lena once again turned her attention to Daniel. "I hope you don't embarrass us in front of the CEO," she said in front of everyone. "You've been slow lately. I need you to stay sharp." He nodded calmly. "I'll do my best, ma'am." The room went quiet again. Everyone knew she was being unfair, but no one dared to speak up. When she walked away, one of the junior employees whispered to Daniel, "You're taking this really well. I don't think I could handle it like that." He smiled lightly. "It's easier when you understand that people act from what they know. Sometimes they just need time to see things differently." The junior employee didn't quite understand what he meant, but she could tell he wasn't angry. He was just patient. A few days later, Daniel overheard two employees talking about how they wished management cared more about their ideas. They said they felt invisible and underappreciated. That night, Daniel stayed behind again and wrote down some notes about what could be done to make the workplace better. Meanwhile, Lena was at home preparing her speech for the CEO's visit. She imagined shaking hands with him, showing off her reports and hearing him praise her leadership. The thought made her smile. She had no idea that the man she had been, ignoring, criticizing, and belittling all this time, was the very person she was so eager to impress. As the date of the CEO's visit drew closer, everyone felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. The office was spotless, the presentations ready, and the team nervous. Lena stood in front of the mirror that morning, adjusting her blazer and smiling at her reflection. "This is my moment," she whispered to herself. But little did she know, the moment that was about to come would change her life in a way she never expected. The week of the CEO's visit finally arrived, and the whole office was buzzing with energy. Everyone was nervous but excited. Desks were cleaner than ever, files neatly stacked, and even the coffee station looked new. Lena walked around with a clipboard, inspecting every corner. She gave out instructions like a general before a big battle. "Fix that banner. The logo isn't aligned properly. And someone polish the meeting table. It needs to shine." People moved quickly when she spoke. No one wanted to give her a reason to snap, especially this week. Lena had made it clear that this visit was her chance to prove herself. She believed that if she impressed the CEO, she could get promoted to regional manager. She'd been practicing her talking points in front of a mirror every night. Daniel watched the chaos quietly. He was sitting at his desk, checking through data sheets, occasionally helping others when they asked. He didn't act nervous, which made a few people wonder if he even understood how big this visit was. What they didn't know was that Daniel was already prepared, because he was the one everyone was preparing for. That morning, the HR assistant approached Lena. "The CEO's team just confirmed his schedule. He'll be here tomorrow at 10, she said. Lena smiled confidently. "Perfect. I'll make sure he sees how well this branch runs. I want everything flawless." She looked around the room and raised her voice. "Everyone, tomorrow's the big day. No mistakes, no delays. This visit could mean great things for all of us." The employees nodded and went back to their work. When Lena's office door closed, a few of them sighed in relief. One whispered, "If only she treated us this nicely every day." Another replied softly, "Let's just survive tomorrow." That evening, when most people had left, Daniel stayed back with a few junior staff members to finish some reports. One of them, a quiet young woman, looked at him curiously and said, "You never seem nervous even when Lena's being so tough. How do you stay calm?" He smiled gently. "Getting upset won't change anything. Sometimes people act out of pressure. The best thing we can do is stay focused and do our work well." The girl nodded. "I wish she saw things like you do." Daniel didn't answer. He just gave her a reassuring look and continued typing. The next morning, everyone arrived earlier than usual. Fresh flowers were placed in the reception area. The company logo shined under the lights, and the air smelled faintly of coffee and new carpet. Lena came in wearing her best suit, her hair neatly tied back. She was ready to meet the CEO. At 10 sharp, the office door opened. A few senior managers from the main headquarters entered first, greeting everyone warmly. Then, a familiar face walked in. Daniel. Lena blinked in confusion for a moment. He was no longer dressed in simple office clothes. He wore a sharp tailored suit, and beside him was the company director, introducing him proudly. "Everyone," the director said, "please welcome our new CEO, Mr. Daniel Roberts." The room fell silent. Every head turned toward Daniel. For a moment it felt like time had stopped. Lena's confident smile froze. Her clipboard nearly slipped from her hand. Daniel looked around the room, his familiar calm smile still there. "Good morning, everyone," he said warmly. "It's good to finally meet you all properly." The employees stared in disbelief. Some whispered softly, realizing the truth. The man they had thought was a new staff member, the one Lena had been treating poorly for weeks, was actually the CEO. Lena tried to speak, but her throat felt dry. She finally managed, "Sir, I didn't realize." Daniel turned to her politely. "Yes, I know," he said softly. His tone wasn't angry, but it carried weight. "You didn't." The director continued speaking to the group, explaining that Daniel had chosen to work quietly in several branches before taking over officially. He wanted to understand the company's real challenges, not just what reports said. While the staff listened, Lena's mind was spinning. Every harsh word, every dismissive comment she'd made echoed in her memory. She remembered cutting him off during meetings, correcting him in front of others, even accusing him of slowing down the team. Now all those moments felt like stones pressing on her chest. After the meeting introduction, Daniel thanked everyone for their effort in preparing for the visit. "I've seen how hard this team works," he said, "and I've also seen how much potential there is here. But we have a lot to improve, especially in how we treat and support each other." His eyes moved across the room, briefly stopping at Lena. She lowered her gaze. Once the group dispersed, Lena stayed behind, pretending to check some files. Her hands were shaking slightly. Daniel approached her calmly. "Lena," he said in his usual gentle tone, "do you have a few minutes?" "Of course, sir," she said quickly. Her voice was softer than it had ever been. They walked into her office. She tried to compose herself, sitting straight and forcing a smile. "I just want to say I had no idea. If I had known you were..." Daniel raised a hand lightly. "That's exactly why I didn't tell anyone. I wanted to see how things really worked when titles weren't involved." She looked down, her voice trembling slightly. "I suppose I didn't make a very good impression." He took a slow breath. "I believe in giving people chances to learn. What I saw here taught me a lot about this branch, but also about leadership." Lena felt her cheeks burn. She couldn't meet his eyes. "I'm truly sorry, sir. I never meant to be disrespectful." "I know," he replied calmly. "But sometimes we don't realize how our actions affect others until we see it from a different angle." There was a long pause. The sound of people working quietly outside filled the silence. Lena finally said, "You must think I'm terrible." Daniel shook his head. "No. I think you're capable, intelligent, and hard-working. But leadership isn't just about getting results. It's about how we treat the people who help us get there." His words were calm but firm. They hit her harder than any harsh criticism ever could. He stood up to leave and said, "We'll talk again later this week. Take some time to think about what we discussed." When he left, Lena sat still for a long time. Her confident posture was gone. She stared at the table, remembering every moment she had made others feel small. She remembered the nervous looks on her team's faces whenever she entered the room. For the first time, she didn't feel proud of her position. She felt embarrassed. That afternoon, when she stepped out of her office, the atmosphere felt different. People were whispering, looking at her carefully, but not with the usual fear. There was a quiet understanding in the air. Daniel was speaking with a few employees nearby, listening intently to their concerns. They looked relaxed around him. For the rest of the day, Lena stayed unusually quiet. She answered questions softly, avoided raising her voice, and tried to help where she could. People noticed. It wasn't like her. When Daniel walked past her desk in the evening, he gave a polite nod. "Good work today," he said. Lena managed a small smile. "Thank you, sir." After he left, she sat there, feeling a strange mix of regret and relief. The truth had finally come out, and though it had shaken her, a part of her knew she needed this moment. Maybe it was the only way she'd ever learn what real leadership meant. The day that began with pride had ended with a lesson she would never forget. And deep down, Lena knew this was only the beginning of her change. The next few days after the big revelation felt strange for everyone in the office. People were still talking about how the quiet man they'd thought was a new employee turned out to be their CEO. It had been a shock, but it also brought a sense of respect and curiosity. Everyone wanted to know what he would do next. Lena, however, wasn't feeling any of that excitement. She was filled with embarrassment and regret. Every time she saw Daniel, her heart sank a little. The image of his calm face when she realized the truth replayed in her mind again and again. She couldn't forget the moment she had mocked his ideas or dismissed his help. Now she saw those moments for what they really were, her arrogance on full display. The following Monday, Daniel returned to the branch office, this time officially as the CEO. The staff gathered for a short meeting where he spoke kindly but directly. "I appreciate all the hard work everyone does here," he began. "But I also want us to think about how we work together. A strong company doesn't grow just because of results. It grows when people trust and respect one another." Everyone listened carefully. His words were simple, but they carried meaning. Then he added, "Over the past few weeks, I learned a lot about how this branch operates. There are things we do very well, and there are things we need to change." Lena stood at the back of the room, silent. She didn't dare look at him directly, but she could feel every word sink deep inside her. After the meeting, Daniel stayed back to talk with individual employees. He listened to their concerns, asked about their workload, and even took notes. He didn't act like a distant executive. He talked to them like an equal. It surprised many people who had never seen someone in his position behave so humbly. Later that afternoon, Daniel called Lena into his office. She took a deep breath before walking in, her palms slightly sweating. She had spent the whole weekend rehearsing what she might say if he wanted to speak with her. When she entered, he was seated behind the desk, going through some files. He looked up and smiled faintly. "Please, have a seat," he said politely. She sat down, her eyes fixed on the floor. "Sir, before you say anything, I just want to apologize again," she began. "I behaved terribly. There's no excuse for how I treated you." Daniel nodded slowly. "I appreciate your honesty, Lena, but this isn't just about me. It's about how a leader treats everyone, not just people above them." She swallowed hard. "I understand. I was too focused on performance. I thought being strict would make people work harder." "Strictness isn't the problem," he said calmly. "It's how we make people feel while expecting the best from them. You're capable and intelligent, but leadership isn't about fear. It's about trust." Her eyes filled with tears she was trying to hold back. "I know," she whispered. "I've seen how people react around me. They're scared, not motivated. I ruined the team spirit." Daniel leaned back slightly. "It's not too late to fix it, but it will take effort. Respect isn't built by words, it's earned through actions." She nodded quietly. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I want to change." He gave a small smile. "That's a good start. I'm not letting you go, but I am making some changes. You'll be reassigned to a smaller branch for now. Not as punishment, but as an opportunity. A fresh environment might help you rebuild your confidence and learn from a new perspective." Lena's heart sank for a second. A smaller branch felt like a step backward, but deep down she knew she deserved it. Still, she was grateful he wasn't firing her. "Thank you, sir. I'll do my best to prove I can be better." Daniel nodded. "I believe you can. Sometimes life teaches us lessons in unexpected ways. This is one of them." The next week, Lena packed up her office. Her co-workers wished her luck. Some seemed genuinely supportive, others were quiet, unsure what to say. She didn't blame them. She knew she had created that distance. As she left, she looked around one last time, realizing how much she had missed by being so focused on control. When she arrived at the smaller branch, it felt completely different. The office was smaller, more relaxed, and the people there worked closely like a family. The branch manager, a kind middle-aged man named Mr. Green, greeted her warmly. "We're happy to have you, Lena," he said with a smile. "You'll be handling operations here. It's not as fancy as the city branch, but we take pride in our teamwork." She smiled softly. "I'm looking forward to learning from all of you." The first few days were humbling. Instead of giving orders, Lena found herself doing tasks she hadn't done in years, checking supplies, calling clients, helping with deliveries. At first it felt strange, but then she realized how much she had missed the feeling of real teamwork. People treated her kindly, not because they feared her, but because they respected her willingness to help. One afternoon, a junior employee named Clara made a small mistake in a client file. Instead of scolding her like she used to, Lena smiled gently and said, "Don't worry, it happens. Let's fix it together." Clara looked surprised, then grateful. It was a small moment, but it meant something to Lena. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was part of the team, not above it. Weeks turned into months, and Lena began to change. She listened more, spoke softly, and treated everyone with patience. She even started to enjoy the small victories, like finishing a project on time or helping someone learn a new skill. The staff began to trust her, and slowly the branch started performing better than before. One morning, as she was reviewing reports, an email popped up from Daniel. It was short and simple. "I'm visiting your branch next week. I've heard good things. Looking forward to seeing your progress." Lena's heart raced when she read it. She felt both nervous and proud. This time, she didn't want to impress him with numbers. She wanted to show him she had truly changed. When Daniel arrived, the staff greeted him warmly. He noticed how relaxed and cheerful everyone seemed. The energy in the office was different, lighter, more positive. He spent the morning reviewing the team's work, asking questions and observing quietly. During lunch, he sat with Lena in the break room. The two of them shared a simple meal and talked about the branch's growth. "You've done well here," he said finally. "The staff seem happy and the results speak for themselves." Lena smiled, her eyes bright but humble. "I can't take all the credit. They taught me a lot. I used to think being a leader meant being in control, but now I know it means lifting others up." Daniel nodded. "That's the kind of leader people remember." There was a pause before she spoke again, her voice quieter. "I'm truly grateful for what happened, even if it was hard. It changed me. I see things differently now." He looked at her and said, "That's the purpose of every challenge, to make us grow." After lunch, he gathered the whole team and thanked them for their effort. Before leaving, he turned to Lena and said, "Keep doing what you're doing. You're on the right path now." When he left, Lena stood by the window watching his car drive away. A gentle smile appeared on her face. For the first time in her career, she didn't feel powerful or superior. She felt proud in a way that was quiet and real. She knew she had a long way to go, but she also knew she had finally become the kind of person she used to look down on, kind, patient, and understanding. And deep down, that felt better than any promotion ever could. Months passed after Daniel's visit to the smaller branch, and Lena's life had taken a quiet but meaningful turn. The person who once measured success by numbers and titles now measured it by how people felt around her. She had learned to listen, to understand, and to lead with kindness. The transformation wasn't sudden. It came slowly through mistakes, small victories, and honest reflection. The branch she managed started performing better than ever. Clients noticed the improved teamwork, and employees began staying late voluntarily just to finish projects together. There was laughter in the office now, something Lena hadn't heard in years. It felt like a completely new world compared to the tense environment she once ruled with fear. One Friday evening, after everyone had left, Lena sat by her desk, looking at the faint glow of the city lights outside the window. She smiled to herself, remembering how far she had come. The same desk that once felt like a throne now felt like a place of connection. Just then her phone buzzed. It was a message from Daniel. "I'll be hosting a leadership workshop next month at the head office. I'd like you to be one of the speakers. Your journey could inspire others." Her heart skipped a beat. Being asked to speak at such an event was an honor, especially by the CEO himself. But it also filled her with nervousness. She had once been known as the boss who mistreated people. What if others still saw her that way? After a long pause, she typed back, "Thank you, sir. I'd be honored." In the weeks leading up to the event, Lena prepared carefully. She didn't want to sound rehearsed. She wanted to speak honestly. Every night she thought about what had truly changed her. The day she met Daniel as the new guy, the shame of realizing who he really was, and the lessons that followed. Finally, the day arrived. The event was held in the main conference hall of the company's headquarters. The room was filled with managers from different branches, all eager to hear from top performers. Lena stood backstage, clutching her notes tightly. Daniel opened the event with a short speech. He talked about growth, empathy, and the importance of humility in leadership. Then he smiled and said, "Today you'll hear from someone who embodies those values. She's a manager who turned one of our struggling branches into one of the best performing ones. Not through pressure, but through compassion. Please welcome Lena." As the applause echoed, Lena walked up to the stage. Her hands trembled slightly, but she took a deep breath and smiled at the crowd. "Good morning," she began softly. "When I first joined this company, I thought being a boss meant having power, making sure everyone feared me so they'd work harder. I believed respect came from authority. I was wrong." The audience listened quietly. Some nodded in understanding. Others leaned forward, curious. "There was a time," she continued, "when I looked down on people who didn't meet my standards. I judged them, scolded them, and never listened. I thought that's how leaders were supposed to act. But one day, life decided to teach me a lesson, in the most unexpected way." She paused, glancing toward Daniel, who sat in the front row. "A man joined our branch as a new employee. He was quiet, observant, and humble. I treated him poorly because I thought he didn't know much. But that man turned out to be our CEO. A soft murmur spread through the room. Many had heard parts of the story, but hearing it directly from her was different. "That moment broke my pride," she said honestly. "It was the hardest and most important day of my career. I was embarrassed, but more than that, I was awakened. I realized that leadership isn't about control. It's about care. You can't earn loyalty by fear. You earn it by making people feel seen, valued, and respected." She looked around the room, her voice steady but emotional. "I got a second chance. A chance to rebuild myself in a new place. And I took it. I learned that being humble doesn't make you weak. It makes you stronger because people will stand with you, not against you." By the time she finished, the audience was silent. Not out of boredom, but out of respect. Her words felt real, not like a prepared speech. When she stepped down, Daniel stood up and started clapping. Others followed until the whole room was filled with applause. Later, during a coffee break, several managers approached her. Some wanted advice. Others just wanted to thank her for being honest. "Your story reminded me why I started doing this job," one said. "We forget sometimes that people matter more than deadlines." Lena smiled. It was the kind of appreciation she had never experienced before, genuine and heartfelt. That evening, as the event ended, Daniel walked over to her. "You spoke beautifully," he said. "You didn't just talk about change, you showed it." She smiled, her eyes warm with gratitude. "Thank you for giving me the chance to change, sir. If you had fired me that day, I wouldn't be standing here." Daniel shook his head. "Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is whether they learn from them. You did." They stood quietly for a moment before he added, "I'd like you to lead our new mentorship program. We need someone who understands what true leadership means. Someone who can help others grow the way you did." Lena was stunned. "Me, are you sure?" He smiled. "I'm very sure. You've proven that transformation is possible, and I want others to see that too." Tears welled in her eyes as she nodded. "I'll do my best." In the months that followed, Lena embraced her new role. She traveled to different branches, meeting new managers, listening to their struggles and guiding them through challenges. She didn't preach or pretend to be perfect. Instead, she shared her story, the failures, the embarrassment, the lessons, and the growth. People connected with her honesty, and soon she became known across the company not as the arrogant boss she once was, but as a mentor who inspired others to lead with heart. One afternoon, after finishing a workshop, she received a message from Clara, the young employee from the smaller branch. It read, "You taught me more than you'll ever know. I'm now training new staff, and I'm trying to lead just like you did. Thank you for believing in people." Reading that, Lena couldn't help but smile. She realized that her story had come full circle. The woman who once hurt others through pride was now helping others find kindness in their own leadership. Years later, When she looked back, she didn't remember the awards or promotions. She remembered the faces of the people she had met, the lives she had touched, and the lessons that had shaped her. Her journey wasn't about falling from grace. It was about rising as a better human being. And every time she walked past the office hallway where her story had begun, she smiled quietly, whispering to herself, "Sometimes, the hardest lessons become the most beautiful chapters, because in the end, true success isn't about being powerful. It's about being remembered, and not for how loud your voice was, but for how gently you made others feel heard."